Podcasting from Woodstock, Georgia, welcome to Soul Solutions, a show where we overcome our fears and our limiting beliefs. I'm your host, author, and certified life coach, Terry Kozlowski. Episode 12. Fear is the usual state of the ego, but we can overcome. The ego's job is to protect us, so it's always looking for danger. Even if the situation isn't hazardous, it still has its hackles up because it's expecting something to go wrong. That's its role. Seek out threats so it can protect us from any harm, real or imagined, by the egoic mind. The negative outlook on life is why the natural state of the ego is fear. Genuine fear is something that our bodies naturally respond to when we are physically threatened. It's the automatic reaction we all call flight or flight response. Our heart rate, blood pressure, and breathing increases so that our bodies can handle the danger. This response is normal and a part of our genetic makeup. Egoic fear is psychological because the threat isn't real. It's just driven by the ego's voice in our head. It reruns a threat over and over and over, making us relive those moments, or it makes it up countless ways the hazard could have been worse, or ways we could have avoided the situation completely. Either it makes us feel victimized or blames us for the outcome. Only negativity comes from allowing the egoic mind to maintain its storytelling. What are some of the familiar ego stories? The ego wants to protect our self-image because that's all it is, our self-image. But sometimes it inflates what reality is and projects its own, which causes us even more problems. It's the egoic voice that makes us think something is trying to take our position. The shameful thought we have about ourselves is the ego. Feeling embarrassed is an egoic emotion because it affects our self-esteem. When we allow the egoic voice to run our lives, we realize that we only see half the story. The part of the ego wants us to see, not necessarily the truth. But if we acknowledge the role the ego is to play in our lives, if we see that it's trying to protect us, we can accept its part and dismiss the concern. Just because the egoic mind thinks that there's a threat doesn't mean it's real. Once we are aware of the egoic voice and its function, we can stop reacting to the situations. Instead, we can change our responses based on the actual circumstances, not on how the ego feels. What's the core of our fear? As we continue to suffer because of the egoic thoughts, we stay stuck. All negative emotions, hurt, anxiety, sadness, anger, loneliness, jealousy, self-criticism, rejection, blame, all have the root of fear, and more specifically, fear of not being loved. Being rejected or abandoned keeps us fearful and unaware of the egoic nightmare as we struggle in our search for love as human beings. But the truth is, the love we seek outside of us, we already have within us. We have to open our hearts to the pure love that flows from our being. In making this conscious choice, we move away from our fearful reactions and begin to respond with love. By doing so, we allow the magic of flow to enter our lives and things get more comfortable. An open heart means you are vulnerable, which the egoic mind takes as a threat. Society thinks vulnerability is a sign of weakness, but it's the lie of the ego. Showing your vulnerability means that we are our authentic selves. We can't be authentic when the ego is controlling our lives. So how do we determine if a threat is real? Pause. Take a deep breath. And take a moment to assess the situation honestly. Are we reacting emotionally because our buttons were pushed, or are the circumstances such that we need to make an appropriate response? The first step is to evaluate the surrounding conditions. Are the ego's concerns real or inflated? Are we reacting defensively? Once completed, we can move forward with a thoughtful response. After we initially assess the situation, pause again. Take another deep breath. Determine how or why the circumstances are affecting us. The time it takes for us to breathe allows our heart's voice to give us direction. The goal is for us to respond from a place of consciousness and emotional intelligence. In this response, we enable ourselves to rise above the circumstances and overcome the situation in a positive way. Finally, check in with those around you. Are others reacting from their egoic place, or are they assessing the conditions differently than we initially did? By looking around us, we can help ourselves see the actual circumstances and not just what our egoic mind wants us to see. What disguises does egoic fear wear? The egoic mind is a master of disguises. The more it can hide its fearful state, the better it can control our lives. Worrying about the future is one society accepts, but concern, or its other mass anxiety, is toxic. The ego uses the past to prey on our future. This apprehension isn't real because the past does not indicate the future. Only the present moment is tangible. And in this present moment, we can stop the egoic mind from talking to us about an unknown future. Another costume the ego uses to engulf us in fear is to run scenarios in our minds about our lives. When we hear the egoic voice speak about the should or the could of anything, we should take heed. When it focuses on my anything, we feel powerful, but this is a false empowerment because it's actually isolating us from others. When the ego separates us from our vital connections, it's harmful as it causes us to cut ourselves off from love and support. The limiting belief of scarcity is a guise of the ego. It believes that there isn't enough for everyone, so we can't have it if a friend has something we desire, or that we aren't worthy of a grand love affair. The scarcityness the egoic mind accepts as true is its misguided idea that it's in control. Why does the ego want control? The egoic mind thinks that for it to survive, it must be in control of our lives. It holds the belief that it's always right as its only evidence to maintain control over us. And to keep us under its control, the egoic mind keeps us fearful. It causes us to be afraid and feels negative emotions, so we allow it to run our lives. The ego uses our own thoughts against us as a way to maintain the illusion of control, and sadly, we let it. The egoic mind keeps us asleep as it runs nightmares through our thoughts. According to the egoic scenarios, we can never achieve our desires because something is always out to get us. The dream state seems very real to us, and this is how the ego maintains its control over us. The reality is the control the ego thinks it needs is an illusion. The egoic mind wants us to feel safe, but it only when it surrenders control and allows the heart to lead do we actually feel a sense of security. When we let go, when we allow the natural flow of life to move us towards our dreams, do we feel safe? How do we defeat the nightmare? With any bad dream for us to overcome, all we have to do is wake up. We have to move out of our egoic mind, out of the nightmare it plays in our heads. This awakening is a return to our soul. We have to realize that the fearful state the ego wants us to believe is an illusion. The reality is how we choose to respond and the meaning we decide to give to the circumstances at hand. When we are aware, we can consciously determine the meaning of the situations, thereby choosing how to respond with love and create peace in our lives. Freedom from the nightmare means that we live in the present moment where the ego has no dominion. And in the now, we allow the heart's voice to rise up from within because our soul always had all the answers we seek. All the love, all the peace, all the security we desire in our lives are already within us. All the strength we need and the wisdom to make decisions are within us. But the ego has kept us in this nightmare so we can't see the truth. Why is conquering fear an inward journey? The ego keeps us cemented in a physical reality that it fills with anxiety. It's because that life is complicated and can't be figured out because the egoic mind just can't do it. Despite the ego's intention to keep us safe, it keeps us in fear. The separation and scarcity that the ego falsely perpetuates dissipates as we become secure as the ego surrenders to the soul's voice. The soul knows that it is connected to the divine and everything in the universe. The soul does not believe in separation. It sees ourselves and others and lovingly accepts them as they are. The heart knows there is more than enough and that we are worthy. The soul is where we find the love we've always wanted. Living from the soul and not the mind, we allow love to rule our lives instead of the ego's fear. Our reality's simplicity comes down to, are we living from a place of fear or a place of love? And if we take a misstep in this instant, we have the next minute to correct because we are creating our lives moment by moment. Why does the awareness calm the egoic mind? We aren't trying to fight our fears because the ego's tough and it knows how to push our buttons. Our awareness of the fears is how we control them. Watch them when they arise. Witness how we feel and recognize what the ego is showing us. Once we acknowledge the idea, we can dismiss it and respond appropriately from a place of love and not a place of fear. Pay attention to what triggers cause us to react so we can note where we need to focus our awareness. When we begin to do this more regularly, we create space for peace to enter our decision making. As we do this repeatedly, the fears disappear because we have proven to the ego that those threats are not dangerous. Be gentle with yourselves through this learning process. It takes time for our awareness to become the normal state of being. The ego reigned for a long time, and it doesn't go away immediately, and it fights us along the way. It still has a job to do, but as we listen to the heart's voice more habitually, we quiet the egoic thoughts. So let's imagine a new dream. If we stayed in the moment and weren't concerned about the past or the future, how would this affect our lives? When a troublesome circumstances arose, maybe we would listen to our heart's voice more readily. We could set personal boundaries with others, knowing that they were for us, for our self-care. We would no longer allow others to take away our power. We could say no to things that are less meaningful to us and focus our time on doing our life's work. We would notice that others' reactions didn't affect our moods. Our creativity would pour out of us. We would trust our intuition to guide us, as we would know that our soul's voice only tells us the truth, and we would automatically trust it. We will have fewer doubts about our decisions because we know if we misstep, in the next moment, we can alter our course. There are no limits before us and no end to the positive changes we would see. Our full potential is limitless when we live from a place of love. When we consciously become aware of our responses to our surroundings, all our dreams can become our reality. Moving forward from a place of love. Each day we have a choice to believe the ego's lies and stay in a state of fear. We can continue to react to the egoic mind's emergencies based on its belief of separateness and scarcity. In doing so, we give it control of our lives and continue our suffering as we allow negative emotions to plague us. Or we can choose to listen to the heart's voice, our true selves, the part of us that is connected to spirit. As we become open-hearted and vulnerable, we become aware. We are more fully present in each moment. All the questions we ask have answers from within, and we are now listening. Our responses to life circumstances come from a place of love, and all things work to our advantage. Our lives' quality is determined based on how we react or respond to the situations in our lives. Do we react from a fear-based ego, or do we respond with love from the soul? The choice is ours each and every day. Please choose wisely. As we become more conscious of how our ego keeps us in a fearful state, we can take control of our lives by responding from a place of love instead. Do you need support to help you live from a place of love and not fear? Do you want a strategy to help you overcome the ego's limiting beliefs and live a successful life? If so, please reach out to me at terrykozlowski.com, where we can put together an action plan for you to create the life you desire. Please join us next week as we discuss how compassion is a natural state of the human heart. Thanks for listening to Soul Solutions with Terry Kozlowski. If you'd like the show and want to learn more, check out terrykozlowski.com, where you can find the links to everything we talked about in this episode. Please subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode as we overcome our fears and our limiting beliefs.